Hi everyone! Today I want to show you how to easily build a bypass functionality for flows and validation roles. This is super handy if you sometimes need to, for instance, import data or do mass updates where you don't want to trigger all your automations, or you need to make some updates without hitting validation roles. I built it using custom settings. Custom settings are super cool as you can set the setting per user or per profile. This way you can let specific users bypass flows or validation roles without having to deactivate them for all users. Okay, let me show you how to build this. We'll start by going to Setup and then Custom Settings. Here we'll create a new custom setting called Bypass. Now we need to add fields for every bypass that we want. You can make it very high level if you just want it as an off and on setting, working for all flows and all validation rules. Or you can make it more specific, like for instance like one per object or whatever makes sense in your org. For now, we'll create a setting to bypass all flows and one to bypass all validation rules. So I'll create a field called bypass flows and the default value should be unchecked. I'll also create a field called bypass validation rules. Now we are ready to implement the bypass setting. We need to update our flows and validation rules to follow the settings. So whenever we create a validation rule, we now need to include a check on the bypass. We do this by selecting our custom setting and the field we created for validation rules. The validation rule should run as usual, as long as the bypass setting is false. Then I will append the rest of the validation rule as normal. This validation will make sure that active accounts have a type field. Okay, let's try it out. So, if I now try to create an account that is active, but doesn't have a type, the validation rule will stop me. Let's now allow my user to bypass the validation rule. I'll open the custom setting and click Manage. I'll add my user to the list and check the checkbox to let me bypass the validation rule. You can also do this for a whole profile. Now, let's try to create an account again and see if I can bypass the validation rule. I'll create an account, set active to yes, and not fill the type and save. The validation rule did not trigger this time, so I was allowed to bypass the validation. Let's also have a look at how to add the bypass check to a flow. I'll create a new record-triggered flow on account creation and updates. So you have two possibilities here. You can add the bypass check directly in the entry criteria if you select formula evaluates to true. Then you can insert the bypass field by selecting Setup and the bypass flow field that we created. The flow should only run if the bypass flow field is false. Now I can add the rest of the criteria for this flow. I'll make it run if the customer priority is blank. If you don't want to use the formula for the entry criteria, then you can instead use a decision element in the beginning of the flow. Here we again will select Setup and the bypass flow field. If it's set to true, then the flow should be bypassed. I'll then add the end element to this outcome so the rest of the flow won't run. Let's add an update element so we can test it out. I'll make the customer priority update to low in this case, and then I will activate the flow. We'll test out the flow by creating a new account with a blank customer priority. It updated to low, so the flow worked fine. Okay, now let's set my user to bypass flows. We'll go into the custom setting and check the bypass flow on my user. If I now create a new account with a blank customer priority and save it, no update happened. So the bypass worked. Okay, well, that was it. I hope this was helpful. Remember to like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'll be happy to help. Bye.